The starship Hyperion drifted silently through the cosmic debris field, its sensors probing the ancient wreckage that stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Commander Isabella Drake stood at the bridge's observation window, her dark eyes fixed on a massive derelict vessel that dwarfed everything else in the field. After 15 years of deep space exploration, she thought she'd seen everything the universe had to offer. She was wrong. Analysis complete, Commander, Lieutenant Raj Patel announced from his station, his voice tight with excitement. That ship, it's constructed from materials we've never encountered before. The energy readings are off the charts, even after all this time. Isabella nodded, her reflection ghosting against the reinforced glass. How long has it been here, Raj? Based on decay patterns? At least 50,000 years. But Commander. He paused, double-checking his readings. There are active power signatures inside. Whatever that ship is, it's still running. The bridge fell silent. Humanity had encountered plenty of ancient ruins and artifacts during their expansion into the stars, but nothing like this. Nothing still active after millennia of dormancy. Get me a secure channel to Admiral Harrison, Isabella ordered, her mind already racing through possibilities. And have Dr. Novak meet me in my ready room. Something tells me we're going to need our best xenoarchaeologist for this. As her crew scrambled to comply, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that they'd stumbled onto something far bigger than a simple derelict. The massive ship's hull bore marks of weapons fire, some from energy types that defied analysis. This wasn't just an abandoned vessel, it was a warrior's tomb. 20 minutes later, Isabella sat across from Dr. Elena Novak, whose usually composed demeanor had given way to barely contained excitement. The holographic projection of Admiral Harrison floated between them, his weathered face grave. The markings match fragments we've found on other worlds, Elena explained, pulling up detailed scans. This ship belonged to the Nexar. Admiral Harrison's hologram flickered. The Nexar? They're a myth, Doctor. Stories to frighten children. With respect, Admiral, Elena countered, every myth has its origin. The Nexar were real, a race of warriors so powerful that other species erased all trace of them from official records. What we're looking at is proof they existed. Isabella leaned forward. And you think there might be survivors? After all this time? The energy readings suggest some kind of stasis technology, Elena replied. If any species could survive 50,000 years of suspended animation, it would be the Nexar. They were bioengineered for survival in ways we're only beginning to understand. Admiral Harrison's expression darkened. Commander Drake, if there's even a chance you found active Nexar technology, you need to withdraw immediately. According to the legends, their warriors were unstoppable. Entire civilizations fell before them. With all due respect, sir, Isabella said, standing, if there are surviving Nexar aboard that ship, we can't just leave them. This could be the greatest first contact opportunity in human history. Or the greatest disaster, Harrison warned. The stories say the Nexar weren't just warriors, they were living weapons, created to fight wars that reshaped galaxies. If they wake up hostile. Isabella met his gaze steadily. Then humanity needs to know what we're dealing with. Better to make first contact on our terms than wait for them to wake up on their own. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. You have 48 hours to investigate. At the first sign of danger, you withdraw. That's an order, Commander. After the transmission ended, Elena studied Isabella carefully. You're going aboard that ship, aren't you? Someone has to, Isabella replied, checking her tactical gear. If there are survivors, they deserve a chance. And if the legends are true, well, maybe it's time someone tried talking to the Nexar instead of fighting them. 6 hours later, Isabella led a small team through the ancient vessel's cavernous corridors. Their boots echoed against metal that seemed to absorb their helmet lights, creating an unsettling void around them. The air was stale but breathable, another impossibility in a 50,000-year-old wreck. These aren't just corridors, Elena whispered over the comm, they're arteries. The whole ship is, organic somehow. It's adapting to our presence. Isabella noticed it too. Subtle changes in temperature, in air pressure, in the very feel of the ship around them. It was alive in ways that defied conventional engineering. As they pressed deeper into its heart, the energy readings grew stronger. They found the stasis chamber in what appeared to be the ship's core. Hundreds of pods lined the walls, each containing a massive figure suspended in crystalline stasis. The Nexar were easily 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in what looked like living armor that shifted colors even in suspended animation. My God, Elena breathed, approaching one of the pods. They're perfect. Exactly as the legends described them. Living weapons, but also, more. Look at these markings, they had culture, art, a whole civilization we know nothing about. Isabella stepped closer to the central pod, where a larger figure floated in stasis. Unlike the others, this one's armor bore elaborate patterns that seemed to move of their own accord. A leader, perhaps, or a champion. The pod's surface rippled at her approach. Warning klaxons blared throughout the ship as energy readings spiked dramatically. Inside the crystal housing, the Nexar warrior's eyes snapped open, ancient, powerful, and very much alive. Well, Isabella said quietly, straightening her shoulders as the massive figure began to move, I guess we're about to find out if the legends are true. Time seemed to slow as the stasis pod's crystalline surface dissolved like morning mist. Isabella held her ground, heart pounding as the massive Nexar warrior emerged. The being before her moved with impossible grace for its size, living armor flowing like liquid metal across its frame. Commander, Raja's voice crackled through her comm, we're detecting massive energy surges throughout the ship. The other pods are starting to activate. The Nexar warrior's head tilted slightly, studying Isabella with eyes that held the depth of millennia. When it spoke, its voice resonated through her bones, the ship's systems automatically translating. You are, human, it said, the words carrying equal parts curiosity and caution. We have slept longer than intended if your kind now walks among the stars. Isabella inclined her head respectfully. I am Commander Isabella Drake of the Earth Alliance vessel Hyperion. We found your ship adrift in space. I am Sovereign the Lax, the warrior replied, straightening to its full height. Last commander of the Nexar Vindication Fleet. You show unusual courage, human, facing us without fear. Around them, more stasis pods were opening, releasing warriors who moved to flank their leader. Elena stood transfixed, her scientific detachment warring with awe as she witnessed history awakening before her eyes. Fear builds walls, Isabella responded. We came seeking understanding. A sound like distant thunder rolled through the chamber, the Lax was laughing. Interesting. Most species sought only to destroy us, viewing our very existence as a threat to their dominion. Yet you wake us willingly. Times change, Isabella said. Humanity is young among the stars, but we've learned that strength comes in many forms. Including the strength to offer friendship instead of raising weapons. Before the Lax could respond, emergency alerts blared through the Hyperion's comm system. Commander. Raja's voice was urgent. Multiple ships just dropped out of FTL. Reading signatures from the Galactic Council fleet, at least 30 capital ships. Isabella's jaw tightened. The Council must have been monitoring their communications with Admiral Harrison. Of course they'd react to news of the Nexar's discovery. Thalax's armor rippled with patterns of deep crimson. Ah, the Council still exists. And still fears what it cannot control. The warrior's gaze fixed on Isabella. They will demand our destruction. The question is, Commander Drake, where will you stand when they do? Sir, Raj cut in again, we're being hailed by Council Admiral Vixthrax. They're ordering us to withdraw and preparing to open fire on the Nexar vessel. Isabella straightened, meeting Thalax's ancient eyes. We stand for what's right, Sovereign. If the Council wants to repeat the mistakes of the past, they'll have to go through us first. A murmur ran through the gathered Nexar warriors. Thalax stepped forward, living armor shifting to reveal intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories of ancient battles. You would defend us? Knowing what we are. What we were created to be. I see what you are now, Isabella replied firmly. A civilization that deserves the chance to choose its own path. The Council doesn't have the right to judge you for a past they helped create. The massive chamber hummed with energy as more Nexar awakened, their combined presence making the air itself feel heavy with potential. Thalax raised a hand, and holographic displays materialized around them, showing the Council fleet moving into attack formation. The Council created us to fight their wars, Thalax said, voice resonating with centuries of memory. When we grew beyond their control, they tried to destroy us. We chose sleep rather than continue a cycle of violence that would have torn the galaxy apart. The warriors' eyes narrowed. But we will not sleep again. Commander, Elena whispered, the ship, it's healing itself. All systems are coming online. Indeed, the ancient vessel was transforming around them. Dormant technology awakened, walls shifting and reforming as the Nexar battleship stirred to life after 50,000 years of slumber. Your ship is in danger, Commander Drake, Thalax stated. The Council will not distinguish between us. They will mark humanity as traitors for awakening us. Isabella activated her calm, Raj, bring the Hyperion alongside. Match our shields with the Nexar vessel's energy signature. She turned to Thalax. Then let's show them why that's their mistake. Humanity in Nexar, together. Thalax studied her for a long moment, then inclined its head in a gesture of respect. Perhaps the galaxy has changed more than we thought, during our long sleep. Very well, Commander Drake. Let us teach the Council the difference between fear and wisdom. As the first shots from the Council fleet lit up space around them, the ancient Nexar battleship surged with power. But this time, its weapons didn't seek destruction. Instead, impossibly advanced defense systems activated, creating an energy barrier that encompassed both vessels. Now, Thalax's voice carried a hint of what might have been hope. Shall we show them what happens when strength pairs with compassion instead of conquest? The galaxy was about to learn that some legends deserve a second chance, and that humanity's greatest power wasn't in its weapons, but in its ability to see beyond ancient fears to the possibility of a better future. The Council's emergency session chamber was a testament to panic. Representatives from 100 species crowded the vast amphitheater, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear and outrage. At the center of the storm stood Isabella Drake, her black uniform stark against the chamber's ornate decorations. Beside her, Sovereign Thalax towered like a living shadow, the Nexar warrior's presence sending ripples of tension through the assembled delegates. This is madness. High Counselor Zextral's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. The human awakens our greatest threat, then dares to stand before us claiming peace. Your greatest threat. Isabella's voice cut through the chaos. The Nexar have shown more wisdom and restraint than this council. They could have destroyed your fleet. Instead, they chose to protect both our ships without causing a single casualty. A trick, someone shouted from the gallery. Their weapons. They can't change their nature. Thalax stepped forward, living armor rippling with patterns of deep blue and gold. The chamber fell silent, ancient instincts recognizing a predator among them. We were weapons, the Nexar's resonant voice filled the space. Created by your ancestors to fight wars you were too afraid to face yourselves. But we evolved. We grew. We chose sleep rather than continue the cycle of violence. And now you return to claim dominion over us all, Zextral accused. No, Isabella interjected. They returned to find a galaxy that supposedly evolved past its warmongering history. Yet here you stand, ready to condemn an entire species based on ancient prejudice. The council chamber erupted again, but a new voice cut through the din. Elder Kthan, oldest of the archivists, rose from his seat. His ancient form seemed to bend under the weight of history itself. "There is a way," the elder's whispered words somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. "An ancient protocol, written into the very founding of the council. The right of trial combat." Murmurs swept through the assembly. Isabella glanced at the lax, noting how the warrior's armor had shifted to patterns she hadn't seen before. "Explain," the lax commanded softly. Elder Kthan's multifaceted eyes gleamed. "A representative chosen by the Nexar faces our champion in ritual combat. If your champion prevails, the council must acknowledge the Nexar's right to exist freely in this galaxy. If our champion wins, the Nexar return to stasis, sealed away forever." "You can't be serious," Isabella started, but the lax raised a hand. "We accept," the Nexar sovereign declared. The chamber exploded with activity. Council members huddled in urgent discussion while others rushed to consult ancient texts. Isabella turned to the lax, keeping her voice low. "This is exactly what they want, a chance to prove you're still the weapons they fear." "Perhaps," the lax replied, ancient eyes studying her. "Or perhaps it's a chance to prove we're more than what they made us. The question is, Commander Drake, will you trust us as we have trusted you?" Before Isabella could respond, High Counselor Zekstral's voice rang out. "We name our champion. Kroll the undefeated, veteran of 1,000 battles." A massive figure emerged from the shadows. Kroll was a Titan-class warrior, cybernetically enhanced and armed with technology that made even the council members nervous. His very presence seemed to distort the air around him. "And who will stand for the Nexar?" Zekstral demanded. The lax stepped forward, armor flowing like liquid starlight. "We choose Commander Isabella Drake of Earth." The chamber went completely silent. Isabella felt every eye turn to her, shock and disbelief radiating from the assembled aliens. Even Kroll seemed taken aback. "Impossible." Zekstral sputtered. "She's human. She cannot represent Dash." "Your laws state the champion must be chosen by the challenged party," Elder Kthan interrupted. "They do not specify the champion must be of that species." Isabella looked up at the lax, understanding dawning. "You knew. You knew they'd expect one of you to fight, to prove their fears right." "We were created to be perfect warriors," the lax replied. "But perhaps what this galaxy needs isn't another display of our power. Perhaps it needs to see that true strength lies in trust, in believing in something beyond ourselves." Isabella squared her shoulders, facing the council. "I accept. The human will die," Kroll rumbled, his augmented voice shaking dust from the ancient chamber's ceiling. "Maybe," Isabella replied calmly. "But I'll die proving that the future doesn't have to be bound by the fears of the past." The combat arena was prepared within hours, a massive zero-gravity chamber lined with energy fields that would prevent serious injury while allowing full range of combat. As Isabella suited up in her tactical gear, she felt Thalax's presence behind her. "There is something you should know," the Nexar sovereign said quietly. "Our armor, it is not merely protection. It is part of us, a living extension of our being. And it can be shared." Isabella turned, seeing the patterns on Thalax's armor moving with new purpose. "What are you suggesting?" "A gift," the lax replied. "Not to make you a weapon, but to show the galaxy what humanity and Nexar can achieve together. If you are willing." As streams of living metal began to flow from Thalax's armor toward her, Isabella made her choice. The future of two species, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. But more importantly, it was a chance to prove that trust, not fear, would light the way forward. The combat arena hummed with electric tension as Isabella stepped into the zero-gravity field. The living metal the lax had shared with her flowed across her combat suit like liquid starlight, responding to her thoughts with an intimacy that both thrilled and unnerved her. She could feel its consciousness, ancient and alive, merging with her own. Across the arena, Kroll activated his arsenal of cybernetic enhancements. Energy fields crackled around him as weapon systems came online, transforming the already massive warrior into a walking battlefield. The assembled council members watched from behind protective barriers, their fear and anticipation palpable. "Last chance to withdraw, human," Kroll's augmented voice boomed. "There's no shame in admitting you're outmatched." Isabella let herself float, feeling the Nexar armor adapt to her movements. "You still don't understand," she replied. "This isn't about matching strength against strength." The battle began without warning. Kroll launched himself forward, cybernetic enhancements propelling him at devastating speed. But where once she would have tried to dodge, Isabella felt the armor guiding her into a different kind of movement, not avoiding the attack, but flowing with it, through it. The assembled aliens gasped as Isabella seemed to liquid shift around Kroll's charge, the Nexar armor rippling like mercury. She used his own momentum to spin him off course, a dance more than a battle. "Impossible," someone shouted from the gallery. "The armor responds to her as if she were Nexar." Kroll recovered quickly, unleashing a barrage of energy weapons. Isabella felt the armor singing in her mind, showing her possibilities she'd never imagined. Each blast was met with a shield of living metal, each attack transformed into an opportunity for something new. "You dishonor yourself," Kroll snarled, using their weapons to fight. "No," Isabella replied, her voice carrying clearly through the arena. "I honor them by showing there's another way." She spun through zero gravity, the armor extending into graceful forms that turned violence into art. "The Nexar aren't weapons, Kroll. They're teachers, survivors, artists. Their armor isn't just for war, it's an expression of life itself." The battle continued, but something was changing. The council members watched in growing wonder as Isabella moved with increasing confidence, the Nexar armor flowing around her in patterns that seemed to tell stories. It wasn't just combat, it was communication, demonstration, proof that technology created for war could be transformed into something beautiful. But fate had other plans for this historic moment. Just as Isabella managed to lock Kroll in a stalemate, emergency alarms blared throughout the council chamber. Elder Kthan's voice cut through the chaos. "Multiple spatial ruptures detected. Something's breaking through from nowhere." The combat arena's protective barriers flickered as massive shapes emerged from tiers in spacetime. Dark, crystalline vessels that seemed to absorb light itself appeared in high orbit around the council world. Their design was unlike anything in known space. "The Void Hunters," Thalax's voice carried equal parts recognition and dread. "They've returned." The mysterious ships wasted no time on diplomacy. Energy beams of impossible darkness lanced down from orbit, cutting through the council's defensive shields like they didn't exist. The chamber shook as explosions rocked the surface. Isabella and Kroll found themselves floating side by side as the battle arena's gravity systems fluctuated. Through the viewing windows, they could see more spatial ruptures opening, disgorging waves of smaller craft that began systematic attacks on the planet's infrastructure. "What are they?" Isabella demanded, the Nexar armor shifting defensively around her. "The reason we went to sleep," Thalax replied, moving to join them. "An enemy from between realities, drawn to advanced civilizations like predators to prey. We fought them to a stalemate 50,000 years ago, but couldn't find a way to defeat them permanently. So we chose hibernation, hoping they would lose interest in a galaxy that appeared to regress technologically." Kroll's cybernetic systems scanned the attackers. "They're weapons, they're not just destroying targets. They're erasing them from existence." Another explosion rocked the chamber. Council members who had been crying for the Nexar's destruction moments ago now looked to them with desperate hope. "The galaxy stands on the edge of annihilation," Thalax declared. "The question is no longer about past grievances, but about survival itself. Commander Drake has shown us that evolution is possible, that ancient enemies can become allies. Now we must all choose, face the Void Hunters together, or perish separately. Isabella felt the Nexar armor resonating with new purpose. She turned to Kroll, extending her hand. What do you say? Ready to make some history? The cybernetic warrior studied her for a long moment, then grasped her offered hand. For survival, he rumbled. No, Isabella corrected, feeling the living metal ripple between them, creating a connection. For something greater. For change. Above them, the Void Hunters' ships began their descent, darkness spreading across the sky like spilled ink. But on the ground, ancient enemies stood together, preparing to fight not just for survival, but for the right to evolve beyond their pasts. The Council world's atmosphere burned with otherworldly fire as the Void Hunters pressed their assault. Isabella stood at the command center of the Nexar battleship, her borrowed living armor flowing like quicksilver as she coordinated with the hastily assembled coalition fleet. Beside her, the Lax directed the ancient vessel's impossible weapons, while Kroll's cybernetic systems interfaced with what remained of the Council's defense grid. Their reality-erasing weapons are targeting population centers, Raj reported from the Hyperion, his voice tight with tension. Conventional shields have no effect. Then we try something unconventional, Isabella replied, feeling the Nexar armor responding to her thoughts. The Lax, you said your people fought them to a stalemate before. How? The Nexar sovereign's armor rippled with complex patterns that seemed to reflect strategic calculations. We discovered their weapons work by forcing localized reality collapse. They don't just destroy, they make it so their targets never existed at all. But you found a defense? Not exactly, the Lax replied. We found a way to match their level of manipulation. Our living metal can adapt to almost anything, even changes in the fabric of reality itself. But the cost? Isabella understood. The energy requirements would be enormous. That's why you chose hibernation instead. Yes. To maintain that level of defense across an entire civilization would have burned out our systems completely. A massive explosion rocked the ship as another Void Hunter beam struck nearby. Through the view screen, Isabella watched in horror as an entire section of the city simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but erased as if it had never been built. We don't need to defend everything, she said suddenly, an idea forming. We just need to prove they can be hurt. Kroll turned his cybernetic sensors toward her. Explain. The Void Hunters attack advanced civilizations, right? They're predators, and predators can be discouraged if the prey proves too costly to hunt. Thalax's ancient eyes gleamed with understanding. A demonstration. Isabella nodded. Exactly. Kroll, can you use the Council's communication network to broadcast across all frequencies? Already done, the cybernetic warrior confirmed. Good. Because we're about to put on a show. She turned to the Lax. Your armor responded to me because it recognized something compatible in human biology, didn't it? Something that resonated with your own evolution? Yes. Your species' adaptability, your capacity for change, it mirrors the fundamental nature of our living metal. Then let's take it further. Not just armor sharing, but true synthesis. Human adaptability, Nexar technology, and Council knowledge, all working as one. Warning signals flashed across Kroll's cybernetic displays. The energy requirements would be astronomical. Even attempting such a merger could tear reality apart as surely as the Void Hunter's weapons. Or, Isabella countered, it could show them that this galaxy has evolved beyond what they can consume. That we're not prey anymore. High above, the Void Hunter's flagship descended through the burning atmosphere, its crystalline surface drinking in light and hope alike. Isabella felt the Nexar armor responding to her determination, its patterns shifting into configurations never before seen. The Lax, Kroll, I need your trust. All of it. The two ancient warriors exchanged glances, then moved to flank her. Kroll's cybernetic systems interfaced with the living metal as the Lax channeled power directly from the battleship's core. Energy coursed through them all as barriers between species began to blur. Isabella felt herself changing, becoming something more than human but not losing her humanity. The living metal flowed like stardust, incorporating Kroll's technological brilliance and Thalax's ancient power. Through their merged consciousness, she could feel the attention of the Void Hunters shift, sensing something new in their hunting grounds. They rose together, their combined form transcending the boundaries of physics. Through every communication channel in known space, their transformation was broadcast, living proof that evolution wasn't just possible, but inevitable. The Void Hunters' flagship fired its reality-erasing beam directly at them. But where reality should have collapsed, it instead flowed, adapted, transformed. The merged consciousness that was Isabella, Thalax, and Kroll didn't just survive the attack, they reshaped it, turning the Hunter's own weapon into a demonstration of life's ultimate victory over entropy. The effect rippled across space-time. Every Void Hunter ship recoiled as if struck, their perfect darkness marred by cracks of living light. Their prey had become something they couldn't consume, couldn't erase, couldn't defeat. One by one, the dark ships retreated, sliding back through their spatial ruptures into whatever reality they called home. But this time, they carried with them the knowledge that this galaxy was no longer their hunting ground. The separation, when it came, was gentle. Isabella found herself standing on the battleship's bridge, the living metal settling back into familiar patterns. But something had changed, not just in her, but in everyone who had witnessed the transformation. "Well," Kroll rumbled, his cybernetic systems recalibrating, "it seems I owe you an apology, Commander Drake." Isabella smiled. "Keep it. We've all got better things to do than dwell on the past." The council chamber, when they returned, was utterly transformed. Where fear and hatred had ruled, now curiosity and wonder took root. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves exchanging ideas about the possibilities revealed by the merger of human, Nexar, and council technology. "What happens now?" Elder Kthan asked, his ancient voice carrying new strength. Isabella looked at the Lax and Kroll, then out at the assembled representatives of a galaxy forever changed. "Now we evolve. Together." The living metal rippled in agreement, carrying within it the promise of a future where differences became strengths, and ancient fears gave way to endless possibilities. High above, stars shone with renewed brightness, as if celebrating a galaxy that had finally learned to rise above its own limitations. The age of fear was over. The age of synthesis had begun.